Okay, you ever wonder how we got Santa Claus?
A few years ago, but you know, it's been explained a couple times now. But I like your chart here. I don't think you've done anything like this. This is kind of nice.
Well, I could have went to 50, but I figured 25 wasn't enough.
Not enough.
You ever compare the two? I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, they're 100%.
You ever compare the two? I mean, let's just look at a couple of these. He has white hair like wool in Revelation 1:14, and Santa Claus has white hair like wool. He has a beard. Isaiah 56 talks about God's beard. Comes in red apparel. Now we did that last week, Isaiah 63. He comes on the scene after the Valley of Armageddon, and he's covered with blood, the blood of vengeance, the blood of justice. Santa Claus comes in red apparel. The hour of his coming is a mystery. Luke 12, Mark 13:33. And likewise with Santa, the hour of his coming is a mystery. You go to bed on Christmas Eve, you wake up, there's presents under the tree, and nobody can tell you when he came. Comes from the north where he lives, Ezekiel 1:4 and Psalms 48:2. Comes from the north where he lives, North Pole of Santa's kid. Is a carpenter, and Santa has a toy shop where he makes toys out of wood. Number 7, comes as a thief in the night, and Santa likewise comes thief in the night. Doesn't knock on the door, doesn't announce himself. He just slips in, slips out like a burglar. He's omnipotent or all-powerful. Santa can deliver all the toys in the world on one night. Okay? That's a pretty powerful trick. Right? He's omnipotent, or he's omniscient. He knows all. He knows if you've been naughty, and he knows if you've been good. In both cases. Okay. Omnipresent. How many households, if there's 4 people in a household, there's 8 billion people, how many households would he have to deliver each minute?
Several thousand.
Okay. 70-some thousand. Okay? And that's every
You were
minute
close.
to get it done in one day.
He said several thousand, so.
Well, it's several thousand, you're right. And that's just, I don't know how many households there are, but let's say 4 people in the house on average. 2 billion households, he does it in 24 hours, you can do the math. So he has to be everywhere at once, omnipresent. God tells us in Psalms 139:7-10, and Ephesians 4:6, and John 3:13, that he fills the universe. His spirit is always available to us. Spirit is always with us. And every other believer on the face of the earth. Like I said, Santa has to be omnipresent because that's the only way you can do it all at once. Ageless and eternal. God is eternal. We have no birth date for Jesus or for Santa, and there's no expectation that he's going to die anytime soon. He lives in men, and Santa lives in the hearts of children. And we put him there. It was our doing. He's a giver of gifts. God is a giver of gifts through the Holy Spirit. We talked about the 36 gifts of the Holy Spirit. Of course, Santa is the giver of gifts. Jesus is the absolute truth, John 14:6, and Santa is an absolute fable. Now, there's a good story about Saint Nicholas. If you have to kind of reconcile Christmas, you can use Saint Nicholas for a example. Saint Nicholas was a Catholic priest, and he was a very rich man. And at some point in his life, he decided that he was going to use his riches for good, and he was going to serve God and help the people of his village and the people around his village. And it was a very poor village. And he was famous for sneaking into a house at night and leaving coins in the socks or in the stockings. And back then, everybody hung their stockings above the fire to dry them out and to get them warm for the morning. Well, he would slip into houses at night if there was a girl who was marrying age and wanted to get married, but didn't have an endowment. And he would slip in and he would put an endowment in her socks so that she would have the endowment she needed in order to get married with the custom of the community back then. So he was a very good man. He was a rich man. He used all of his money to do good. He was a Catholic priest in northwest Germany, up around Finland and Nova Scotia up there. But he was pretty famous. He was a real man, and he was so generous and so giving that the Catholic Church made him a saint. God sits on the throne, Revelation 5:1 and Hebrews 1:8. And of course, Santa sits on the throne. We are told to boldly go to the throne of grace for our needs, and children are bidden to approach his throne, sit on his lap, and tell him what they want for Christmas. He commands children to obey parents, and he tells children to obey parents. Wants little children to come to him, bids children to come unto him. God judges, and Santa either puts you on the good, naughty list or the good list. Everlasting Father, and so there's Everlasting Christmas. Christ Child, Matthew 1:23, and Kris Kringle means Christ Child in German. Did you know that? Kris Kringle means Christ Child in German.
I had forgotten that. I had heard that before, but I had forgotten completely about that.
Worthy of prayers and worship, and prayers and worship to Saint Nick by children. Lord of hosts, Lord over the host of the elves, and the elves were, in the Druid religion, were demons or tree spirits. God says ho ho in Zechariah 2:6. Santa says ho 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 every time he sits on his throne. Prince of Peace, the image of God, Isaiah 9:6, Hebrews 1:3. Symbol of world peace, the image of Christmas. There's a lot of stories on the battlefield where Christmas Eve came along and all the soldiers laid down their arms and they spent Christmas Eve together before they picked up their arms and the day after Christmas went back to killing each other. There's a lot of story where Christmas brought the enemy together on the battlefield. Some other ones that they both come in the clouds. Jesus is going to come in the clouds. Santa's sleigh comes from the sky. And I could go on and go on. Why did we create Santa in such a... Why did we create Santa in such a way that he would mimic God?
Because he's Satan.
Is he Satan?
He said, "'Cause he's Satan."
Because
Satan,
Satan,
yeah,
Satan
you're
wants
exactly
to be.
right.
Yeah.
Because he
Satan
wants to be
created
God.
him
Mm-hmm.
to distract us
That's right.
from Jesus Christ. Satan created him to steal our prosperity. Satan created him as a replacement for God. So, good answer. Good answer. He's Satan's mimic for God. And he does. Some statistics for Christmas. What holiday during the year is the most alcohol consumed?
New Year's.
Yep,
Christmas.
Christmas.
That
What
eggnog gets
holiday
you.
of the year is there the most child abuse?
Christmas.
Christmas. More domestic calls at Christmas than any other time. All the frustration, all the anger, all the tension, it all comes to bear at Christmas. What holiday of the year costs the average household a debt that they will pay for the next 11 months?
11 months, tax returns.
Say what?
That's what tax returns are for.
What's the average debt?
Yeah, seriously.
I know we are the exception, but look at the world.
Yeah, seriously.
Most people charge more at Christmas than they can repay for the next 11 months. And it carries over to the next year. Huh?
Do not expect that in the morning.
This morning I'm sitting there filling candy boxes, and there were 3 commercials from some company that will, if you go over
Debt.
$10,000, they will get you out of debt. Well, why is that at Christmas time that we hear this? Because that's when people are the most desperate when it comes to the bills.
Well, they also have those instant, those apps now that allow you to get instant money. It's like the new
Cash
the new-
apps.
the-
The
the
cat,
new-
yeah.
Well, it's the new payday apps that you can literally go, just like the old check cash in places or the loans. You literally can go on there and they give you $500,
Wow.
just like that.
That's nuts.
I'm
No
like,
strings attached.
yes, I know strings attached. Now you owe them 17 grand.
Yeah, exactly. Enjoy your Christmas socks.
If you go back to the garden, Satan didn't tell Eve a lie. He just asked her a question. He got her thinking in the wrong direction. That's what he's done to us with Christmas, with Santa. And our whole society, it thrives on Christmas. Most companies will tell you that a third to a half of their income comes into their cash registers in December.
Most of my Christmas gifts for the last, I don't know how many years to people are my canned goods. I put a lot into the canned goods, and then they go out for Christmas. Or we had neighbors stop by and they gave us a little tin of candy, and I gave them my apple butter and some and banana bread, and she was just so thrilled with that banana bread. I said I'd rather get homemade goods and stuff for Christmas than something that's going to break by the next year. I said this, people don't know the Christmas anymore, and people are like, what do you want to get? What do you get for Christmas? And I'm like, just make me something. My daughter used to make me little things for Christmas, and I loved them. I still have all this stuff, and that means more than me than anything else.
I made my grandson a writing desk, one of those that kind of high, and it's got the 3 little drawers in the front, and it's called a writing desk, an old-fashioned writing desk. And I made it the way it would have been made with dowel rods and with those interlocking drawers, dovetail drawers. And we're going to give it to him next week. But every time I make one of my grandkids something, they're just thrilled. They got all this stuff under the table. If I come in and with something that I've made them, like 2 or 3 years ago, we went and got some geodes, and I gave it to them for Christmas, and they kind of looked at them like, "Is this supposed to be coal?" I said, "No. As soon as you get unwrapped, we're going to go cut them open, and you can see how beautiful they are and stuff." And so we took a a diamond wheel out, and we scored them all the way around. They tapped them with a hammer, they popped them. Oh man, they've still got them sitting on their dressers and stuff. They'll hold them up to the light and watch them sparkle. Now, on a more serious note, Galatians 4:4-5. Any more comments on Christmas, or do we successfully destroy your Christmas?
I didn't think you could run it any more than. Every year, I don't think you can run it any more than you already have.
And I always managed to.
On number 24, Zechariah 2:6.
Look, there's nothing wrong with Christmas if Jesus is the theme. If we do it, if we give gifts to people who have needs, if we include him in the service, like I always insisted before we open the first present that we read Luke 2, the first part of the chapter. But the minute I got past the birth and went into the next part, kids say, "Now that's not Christmas."
On number 24, God said ho ho, Zechariah 2:4. Which book is that? Because in the NIV it says come come.
It won't be in the NIV.
Yeah. So which book is it
That's
in?
King James.
Is it King James?
King James.
King James. Okay.
King James, he says, "Oh, ho." Yeah. Okay, but when the fullness of the time had come, God sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. Okay. What does the fullness of the time mean? That's the first thing we have to deal with. What's the fullness of the time?
Everything had happened. Like if you think about Mary, her fullness of her time, everything was done. Everything had finally come complete.
Okay. That's a good point, but
But
it's bigger.
Divine purpose. Divine purpose when the
There was a divine purpose to it, and it was scheduled. God often lowers himself in order to accommodate us because we are people of time. You know, God doesn't have a birthday. We celebrate our birthday every year. It's another year. That's all about time. Okay. And God often accommodates us by making himself present in what we understand. It's like a living parable. He puts himself in our presence in a way that we can comprehend. Okay. The fullness of the time means on a celestial level, on a religious level, on a personal level, it means at the exact perfect time. Now, let's look at the calendar. Daniel said that from the decree to rebuild the temple until Jesus came would be 69 weeks of years, which is 483 years. Okay. If you go and find that decree, and they know exactly when it was, it's still in the history books of the Persian nation or the Syrian nation or whoever the decree was, whoever sent Nehemiah back to build the temple. If you find that date and go forward 483 years, what do you see? I was wrong about this for 50 years. I got corrected last year. What do you see? I always thought it was a stable. Actually, it brings you to the empty tomb. Jesus' life and his accomplishment culminated at the empty tomb. It started at the temple. It started at the stable, but it finished at the empty tomb. That's when it was complete. the fullness of the time was complete.
It began. So, in my studies, I have learned that a lot of times, if a stable was actually a cave, that they kept the animals in. So they would carve it in there. So a cave is inside the wall, a tomb is inside the wall too. So if this is true, he was born in a cave and he was buried and rose in another cave.
Yes. A lot of stables back then were caves. They didn't have building materials to waste on animals.
So he
So,
began and ended
yeah.
in the same place.
So it could be speculated correctly that he would be born in a cave. What it basically says is he was laid in a manger, and that was a stone trough that could be anywhere. That's a viable suggestion. And when we get to heaven, we'll know for sure, but that wouldn't surprise me a bit because they didn't have a lot of timber in Israel and they couldn't waste it on stables generally. So a lot of stables were overhangs of rock that had a fence in front of them, but gave shelter for the animals. So that could very likely be true. Nobody drew a picture for us, and we just kind of look at God the way we understand life in America, and it's totally different. If you're in Israel, the life is totally different. The second thing is, Rome had done most of their conquering. They were still messing with the Germans a little bit, but they had done most of their conquering. They had taken England. They were pretty much in peace mode or maintenance mode. So, the Roman Empire understood one thing very well. Your empire would thrive much better if everybody was educated. So they saw to it that everybody could have a free education if they wanted one. They had done most of their conquering, so they were in maintenance with building roads and with improving the situation. So in Jesus' time, you could travel almost anywhere on a solid road. Not a paved road like we have, but a solid road. And they were maintained very well. Every person, they understood that the lowest slave was more important to you, more valuable to you, if he could read, if he could write, and if he could handle money. So they understood that, and so they educated everybody. Almost everybody in the Roman Empire could read, could write, and could do business. Also at that point in time, there was one big empire holding together the entire civilized world of Jesus' day, and that was the Roman Empire. So there was one common language. You could go anywhere, speak Greek, and somebody would understand you. That was the business language, and that was the language of the empire. You'd think it would be Italian, but it was Greek. It was a holdover from the Greek Empire. And because the Greeks started it all, they had a lot of people already educated to speak Greek. So if you wanted to sell your gold, if you wanted to travel, if you wanted to do business, the language of commerce was Greek. So Paul could travel anywhere he wanted to, and as long as he spoke Greek, they would understand him. It was the perfect time to evangelize the world. It was the perfect time for people to understand and read the letters that were being written that Paul wrote and everything, because they were educated, they could read them. And it was a time of peace. The conquest was over, and they were building an empire that was very, very liberal. It was a time of commerce. People could travel back and forth. Jesus, when 2 years was up and Herod decided to kill all the children 2 years old or younger, he could just pack up and go to Egypt, and it wasn't a big, if we packed up and went to Egypt, there'd be a lot of problems involved in it. that Jesus could pack up and go to Egypt, and it wasn't a problem at all. Because of the way the time was, in the fullness of the time. Also, it was the fullness of the time with respect to prophecy in Daniel. Jesus came right at the exact perfect time. Everything was conducive at that point in time with the Roman Empire and with, now they had uprisings here and there, but it was basically a time of peace. There was no persecution. If you paid your tax on the first day of the year, and if you behaved yourself and didn't cause an insurrection, most of the Roman Empire would just leave you alone. You could live your life, you could run your business, you could, as long as you paid your taxes and stuff, they were happy to leave you alone. So Paul could just travel anywhere he wanted to travel. And he could do it without danger, and he could do it with a common language that was spoke almost everywhere. So the fullness of the time means it was the exact perfect time for it to happen. Socially, it was correct. Biblically, and with respect to prophecy, it was exactly right on time. With respect to tolerance, it was fine. You know where the first persecution of the church came from? Rome, right? No. The Jews. Paul was one of the greatest persecutors of the believers. It came from the Jews. It came from within their own country. Who put Jesus on the cross? The Jews. Pilate washed his hands of it. And he gave him to the priest and said, do with him as you will. I want nothing to do with this. Perfect timing. Because who had to kill the sacrificial lamb and shed his blood? The priest. You know how impossible that was? Nobody in the Roman Empire could take a life unless it was approved by the local Roman magistrate. For Pilate to turn that over to the priest was unheard of. It was illegal. And he just did it as if it was the right thing to do. He could have been taken out and killed for, what's it called when you go against your country? Treason. He could have been taken out and killed for treason for violating that law, and yet it was the perfect thing that had to happen at that exact perfect time. God brought it all together from all corners of the earth. And Jesus Christ arrived right on time. Get your candy, get your trail mix, and have a great Christmas.